huge thanks to OK Jazzy. They're your go-to for the 2026 World Cup and an incredible retro archive. They got decades of iconic league classics, from legendary 90s designs to the rarest club heritage kits. Whether it's a high-performance player version or a timeless vintage look, prices start at just £15, 4.5 Trustpilot rating and fast shipping. Use code CHRIS for 8% off and grab your piece of football history now.
Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the Spurs Chat Podcast. We're here to talk about Tottenham's home defeat against Newcastle United. Tottenham Hotspur 0, Newcastle 2. There were some boos at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium at the full-time whistle. Another defeat for Tottenham. After 2 games, Spurs sit bottom of the Premier League table. Played 2, lost 2, scored 0 and conceded 5. Now, we're live on YouTube and on X. Please do get involved. Let us know how you are feeling as a Spurs fan right now and let us know how you are feeling about today's performance. Now, let's get straight into it. Tottenham Hotspur 0. Newcastle United 2, Alanga putting Newcastle 1-0 up after 62 minutes and Wissa doubling their lead after 72 minutes. Now, possession. Tottenham Hotspur had 57.5% of the ball to Newcastle's 42.5%. XG Spurs 1.04 to Newcastle's 0.75. Shots, Spurs had 17, Newcastle had 11. Shots on target, Spurs had 6, Newcastle only had 2. Total touches inside the opposition box, Spurs had 32, Newcastle 21. Goalkeeper saves, Kinski 0, Newcastle 4. Aerial duels 1, Spurs 10, Newcastle 11. Fouls committed, Spurs 15, Newcastle 9. And corners, Spurs had 9, Newcastle had 7. As I mentioned, Spurs at the moment, and I know it's early days, Spurs are sitting bottom of the Premier League table alongside Coventry, who are 18th, Crystal Palace, who are 19th. All 3 clubs have lost 2 out of 2. Now, before we introduce the guests on the panel today, in the stadium here, I've got Richard Whitehead with me. Richard, what did you make of today's game?
How's it going, guys? How's it going, everybody? Yeah, really disappointing. The first half, I had a lot of optimism, and then the second half kind of came to fruition, and the missed chances that we had in that first half really did hurt us in the second half. I think it not only hurt some of the confidence of the players that were still on the pitch, but also Newcastle were building confidence. They had a real plan to play against us, and obviously in the 60th minute they obviously took advantage of that. I think fans were very optimistic. I heard a lot of chat about the team moving forwards and the hope that they had for this season. And for me, there was, again, after the first game, lots of strangers on the pitch, no real togetherness, which you can understand after having so many changes to the team in such a short amount of time. I saw some real glimpses of stardust from the players, but then nothing that really manifested itself to obviously that real clear goal scoring opportunity in the second half. But in the first half, we definitely had those opportunities to put the game out of reach. I think obviously Chris alluded to the amount of chances we had. Obviously their keeper made some good saves, but they were so clinical. And my real frustration sitting in the stadium was, if only had taken those chances in the first half, I think we'd have come out with at least a point today, if not 3 points. But it will come. I think we need to all stay together as fans, all stay together as a club, and I really believe that there's some real positive times coming ahead.
Thanks, Rich. Right, let's go to our panel. Dustin is with us all the way from Singapore. Dustin, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Just finished munching on the muffin, so sorry my mouth is a bit full, but yeah. More full of muffins than Spurs are full of goals at the moment.
We've also got Leigh Baker back with us from New York. Leigh, how are you?
That's all I got to say, lads. It's Tottenham, but otherwise, really happy to be on with you guys. Great to be on with you, Orchy, finally.
And also back with us is Orchy from Istanbul, Turkey. Orchy, how are you?
Disappointed, but yeah, what can we do? We'll talk about it. have our therapy session, and I'm sure I'll feel better by the end of this broadcast.
Orchy, go for it. Give us your thoughts on today's game and performance.
Well, I'm not going to go too crazy actually, because look, at the end of the day, it is true. I mean, look, we've brought in 8 new players. It's going to take some time to gel. We didn't have the best preseason, to be honest, as well. So a lot of players coming in at all different times. Number of players still coming back from injury. People like Maddison, Kudus, etc. It was good to see Kudus today. Yeah, so of course it's always disappointing. You know, we all want our team to win, but I have to be honest. I think we were better in the first half than we were in the second half, and I would feel overall, even though we lost, it was a slightly better performance than Brentford, especially in the first half. We created a number of chances. You could see at certain points of the game that kind of, De Zerbi ball slowly, showing its head. There was some good, at least attempts to make some through balls, cut through the lines, and open up. I mean, you can just see from the XG score, our XG score was actually higher than Newcastle's. I don't think Newcastle were amazing. They played well at times today, but I think they were better last week against Liverpool than they were today against us. Of course, they were away from home today, so that's to be expected. But they only had a handful of chances, and the difference between us and them is that they took theirs and we didn't really take ours, especially in the first half. So that was the real difference. It wasn't like we were, last week we were proper beaten. We were bullied by Brentford. This week, I think majority of the game, I think we were in control. We had majority of the ball. We had, just to give you some stats on top of what you've already said, total passes, we made 491 and they only did 368. So, we had possession, we had more of the possession, but again, we lost the duels. They won more duels than we did. They won 41 overall and we only won 37. So we know where our problems are, and that team just needs to gel, basically. And I think, as I said, once we get to, once the transfer window closes, we know who we have. And once these players get a few more games under their belt, also the players who are coming back from injury, players like Maddison, Kudus, once those guys are up to, actually, once everybody's up to speed, because again, a number of players looked a little bit off the pace today overall, but yeah, I think we're going in the right direction, but it is going to take time. We have to be patient. That's the key word, patience.
Dustin, let's get your thoughts on today's performance and result.
Yeah, I think it's quite not going to be a downer on this, because I think that there are a number of external factors that we need to consider. Primarily, we already have somewhat of an injury crisis. I don't know how in like the first 2 games of the season, so I don't quite know how that's happened again. I think that the preseason didn't help, and I think that there are a number of players that, it's good to see Kudus back on the field. I think that's one positive we can take from the game. One thing I have concerns about is our lack of mobility, because it felt to me like we were very immobile, and as a result we were outnumbered all over the pitch. So sometimes if you're outnumbered at one part of the pitch, it's okay, because it means elsewhere in the pitch you have superior numbers. But because we're so immobile, like Newcastle keeps moving and they go back and they buff the numbers in the places that they're low. So it feels like no matter where we went, I kept taking screenshots of the pitch, and every time I took a screenshot, we were just outnumbered wherever we were. When we were attacking, we were outnumbered in Newcastle's third. When we were defending, they were outnumbering us in our third. So it just feels quite worrying to me, because the movement either suggests a lack of fitness, or maybe it's part of the tactic. If it's part of the tactic, that's very worrying. If it's lack of fitness, then hopefully that gets a lot better. But yeah, I can get into more detail about that later.
Leigh, let's get your thoughts on today's performance.
I'm trying to separate sort of the emotional reaction from the rational reaction, because emotionally, like all of us, like everyone watching, I'm just sad. You know, I just have that sad sinking feeling I had for so much of last season, and it sort of takes over you, doesn't it? Like you just, it's like when you get deep nerves or something. So emotionally, I'm sad, but rationally, if I look at how we played for large parts of the game, obviously how long it's going to take, and I think this is really the key question for me: is how long will it take for us to click, and how many points will we drop before that point happens? I don't know where that is, but it's clearly got to come soon. But I think there are mitigating circumstances. I think we've got to be patient. I think there's more to be optimistic about than not. I think the hard bit, and we talked about this just when we were waiting to come on air, is we're just going to get hammered, because previously we get hammered and we would have plenty of excuses. You know, Daniel Levy, the amount of money we didn't spend, the rubbish players, people we can't move on, injuries, all of that. And I just feel like, and maybe it's something to dwell on as we go, is I just don't think we have any excuses right now. Like everything we have done, we've done consciously. And, you know, let's just hope that it's just going to take a little bit of time to bear fruit, because as of right now, I don't think we can have anything to complain about except for how kind of poor our performances have been. But yeah, I'm going to absolutely keep optimistic and try and see the positives in the game that just went by.
Now, before we get into the starting 11, Fabrizio Romano has just stated that Juventus are advancing in talks to sign Spurs midfielder Pape Matar with a verbal proposal to Tottenham. A loan deal with buy option clause to become mandatory offered by Juventus to Spurs. Now, Orchy, let's come to you. Let's go through the starting 11 today. Kinski, Robertson, Van Hecke, Tell, Gray, Tonali, Fernandes, Marmoush making his Tottenham Hotspur debut, his Premier League debut today. Pedro Porro was back. Benton Kerr, Van der Ven as captain, of course. Subs today: Dubravka, Senesi, Gallagher, Udogi, Bergvall, Solanke. Kudus back in a Spurs shirt today. Davis and more. Notable absentees: Richarlison, who is being linked with a move away. Danso, who of course is being linked with a move away as well. Sarr, who I've just mentioned, and Savio was missing today, having made his Spurs debut on Wednesday against Charlton with muscle fatigue. Orchie, what did you make of the starting 11 and the subs bench today?
I mean, you mentioned it there, Chris. I was surprised, to be honest, to see Gray on there because I thought Porro very likely to start, which he did, but he started as a right winger rather than rather his usual position. Outside of that, that was really, and obviously Savio, but we learned before the kickoff that, you know, he had that, like you said, that muscle thing, so they didn't want to risk him. But apparently he'll be back next week. So yeah, so I think based on the players available, that seems like a decent sort of team to pick. No surprises there. I thought maybe he might start Udogi as well, because he'd mentioned in the press conference yesterday. So yeah, I think with the players that were available, that's the best 11 that he could have put out there. Van der Ven coming in, Pedro Porro coming in. Yeah, shame Kudus wasn't available to start from the beginning. But again, you know, it comes back to Gray, in my opinion, is just not a right back. Although he wasn't massively bad, but it's in the first half especially. I saw again, I specifically looked at him, and he and I think this is something that De Zerbi tells him to do. He wanders into midfield, and he was trying some things in midfield, and he made a couple of good passes and things, but yeah, as a right back, he was also, but every time he kind of moved into that midfield area, he left the right back position open. And a couple of times, that's where Newcastle kind of found penetration, actually. A couple of times, other players had to make it because he was up the pitch and he couldn't get back in time, and Newcastle kind of attacked from that area. But yeah, but again, you know, it's about fitness, really. I think the sooner we get our fitness levels back up, and players like Kudus, Maddison, Savio, they're all available to start and fully fit. I think it's going to be better. So I think give it another maybe week or couple of weeks. I think we're going to look hell of a lot more healthier than we do at the moment.
Orchy, how patient does this Spurs fan base need to be with Roberto De Zerbi and this new squad? Because when you look at the starting 11 and you look now at sub bench with these injured players coming back, having spent so long out, how patient do the fan base need to be? Because we were all very excited going into this season. Of course, 2 Premier League games played, 2 defeats, but it is how you finish the season, not how you start it.
Exactly, Chris. Well, look, just look at that starting 11. You've got Robertson, Van Heck, Tonali, Fernandes, Marmoush, all brand new players who've come into the team. And I know some of those players they were involved lightly in pre-season, players like Fernandes and Tonali. But Fernandes, he had a muscle problem after playing in the initial couple of games in pre-season. He didn't really participate in pre-season after that. Tonali was very much present. But you've got pretty much most of that team, 2/3 of that team are brand new. They are new and they're going to need some time to gel. Today, Van der Ven and Porro were making their first starts of the season. Same with obviously Marmoush. Marmoush made his debut today. Savio couldn't because he wasn't involved. So it's going to take time. These things, as much as they're all good quality players and they come with certain reputations, they haven't had much game time together yet. And I think because of their experience of the Premier League, it's not going to take like 3 months or 4 months or 6 months, or maybe even with some players, it takes sometimes a whole season for them to actually adapt to, players that come from outside of the Premier League. Whereas these players, I would imagine you're looking at weeks rather than months, that eventually they will gel. They will, once they've had a bit more playing time together, they are going to gel. They have that quality in them. And some of our established players as well, when they get their fitness levels up to scratch, I think we're going to see, as I said, I would say probably at the latest, I would say by after the international break, the first international break comes at the end of September. You will see a fairly different team, or better, much better performances than we are at the moment.
Dustin, let's come to you on the starting 11. What do you make of the transfer window so far? Because of course this team has changed dramatically for Roberto De Zerbi. And what do you make of the squad balance? Because as I said there, when you look at the starting 11 today and the subs bench, it is starting to look stronger and stronger.
I think that you have to look at a squad kind of not just in terms of its individuals, but I think that a big part of it is also looking at the chemistry with each other, whether the profiles fit each other. So I think one of the challenges whenever you have a whole raft of signings, and we needed to improve our squad, that's for sure. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't have signed this many players, but the reality is that when you sign these many players, they don't know how they play yet. They don't know how this player likes to receive the ball. They don't know instinctively how certain players make off the ball runs and all of that, for example. So one thing I noticed as well was when they were pressing, I think it was Fernandes that was pressing, and he was trying to get Marmoush to coordinate the press, the centre back, and Marmoush kind of ignored him or didn't take his instruction. So there are a couple of things that you can sign all the best individuals in the world, they still need to gel as a team. And I think De Zerbi said that a lot in the first press conference. We need to become team. So that is a big part of it, the chemistry between players. But I think that De Zerbi's system as well requires the team to be a lot more in sync with each other, because a lot of it will be kind of the combinations that they're playing, the way that they rotate in possession, and these are things that there's no shortcut to getting chemistry in the team. And it means that that's part of the reason when everyone says De Zerbi's team starts slow, it's because they need to develop that chemistry, that understanding with each other in order to be able to get the most of De Zerbi ball. And this is the painful start that we delayed, because when he was trying to get us out of the relegation zone last season, he was like, okay, I can't play my system now. If I try to do that, there aren't enough points available to keep out of relegation. So he didn't really start trying to play De Zerbi ball then. He's starting now, and the slow start that he's famous for is something that we're going to have to go through in order to have the system bear fruit. But it also means that there's the slow start, there's lots of new players, they don't know each other well, there's coordination that they need to have. We still have injuries for some reason. So those are things that combine to give us the difficult start that we have. And we've also played, two teams that are very well organized, and I think they tactically worked out a very good way to give De Zerbi problems, because De Zerbi's style is very clear, and the Premier League has adapted a lot since De Zerbi left and came back. And one of the things that they've adapted to very well is being organized and not being baited into the press. So De Zerbi relies a lot on baiting the press, but if you don't give in to that, then you force us to play to create chances, because the team that you're playing against is not going to create the gaps for you by being baited into the press. So this is the new challenge that he needs to resolve, which is, how do you beat a team that doesn't fall into your trap?
You're still feeling excited though, Dustin, about this season, yeah?
I still do feel excited about this season. I am a bit concerned from the midfield signing perspective, because one of the things I was concerned about when we signed Tonali and Fernandes was not anything to do with their ability as players, it's their profiles, because we don't have kind of the through passing profile, the lock picking profile, and the people that receive those passes. The difficulty is that the best people at picking those through passes are also the best people at receiving them. So like Xavi Simons, James Maddison, Kulusevski, for example, they're all injured, right? So the problem is that we don't have players that play the passes and receive the passes. The profile that we've signed so far has not replaced that at all. And it could well be that, we have 4 players that can do that, and they're going to be fit again at some point. But in the meantime, before they're fit again, at least we saw Kudus play now, but in the meantime, before those number 10s are fit again, we lack creativity in terms of playing the pass and receiving the pass in between the spaces. And when teams sit back and have a low block that we have to break down, we just lack the personnel we need to break that kind of low block strategy.
Leigh, let's get your thoughts on today's starting 11. Marmoush, of course, making his Premier League debut, his Tottenham Hotspur debut today. Great to see Mickey van der Ven back in the starting 11, especially for the Premier League game, because he missed the whole of pre-season. Shame not to see Savio involved today, but overall, what do you make of the starting 11 and the subs bench?
I mean, I didn't like it, but I get it. I didn't like it because I think we all hoped the Savio thing was just internet gossip, but it wasn't. I didn't like the Gray Porro sort of side, but I see the logic, and maybe he thought Porro could help Gray out, which he did on occasion. So I didn't like it, but I understand it. I think the names compared to some of the situations last year, it's night and day in terms of strength on paper. Yeah, I was just so disappointed, really. I'm like many of us, that we got so excited after that cameo, and we were sort of deprived it today. But I still thought players looked slow. I didn't think Van der Ven or Porro struggled really. I still thought, certainly for the first half, Tonali looked like he was running on treacle. I think Fernandes had another great showing. But to Dustin's point, when people sit off us, we seem to struggle, and this team just couldn't break anyone down. And I think the thing we should just remind ourselves, without getting too pessimistic, is Newcastle lost 2 of their best players, one of them to us. Dan Burn wasn't playing, and they've got a new manager who's never coached in the Prem, and yet here they show up and do a number on us with, frankly, 2 soft goals. I mean, the first one's a long ball and knockdown. Okay, it's a great finish, but So I think the starting lineup was I guess the best we could put on the pitch today, and we just got to hope that as the weeks go by we get more back. But what we can't do is get to the international break and write off 15 points, which is what I think it would be. I mean, that's just a massive amount of points. So we've got to start picking up points soon, even if we just got to block out a couple games and get a point, just to get some confidence.
Just to add in here, an exclusive from David Ornstein from The Athletic, Cody Gakpo has decided to join Manchester City, and parties are now working to reach agreement. Leigh, I just want to stay with you. Some boos at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium today after today's defeat against Newcastle. Is that harsh on this team? Is that harsh on Roberto De Zerbi? Do the Spurs fan base need to be more patient? I've noticed a lot of comments on this stream so far. People aren't happy. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, look, I feel as sad and depressed as the next person, but to your point about is it harsh, I think the better question might be, is it helpful? It's not helpful. Like last year, we had to get to rock bottom before we sort of rallied, didn't we, after Tudor? The players' confidence, I mean, look, I'm sure we're going to talk about Tell, who was dreadful. But like it sounded like he was cheered when his number went up. I don't know if that was just the TV. It's just not helpful. So look, I get it. People should vent in the way that they feel is right for them. But I think we've got to do our best to be constructive and be patient. And we've got to look for the positives. And I just have to. Well, we just know from life that if people are on your case in 5 minutes professionally, your confidence goes. So I think we've just got to do our best to support. I don't mean blindly. I think everyone has a right to be critical, but I think booing at halftime or at the end of the first half, at the end of the game from our first home game of the year is a little bit myopic and short-sighted. And I just hope that the majority of the fans, just keep the faith, frankly.
Orchy, as I mentioned, there's a lot of comments coming in, and some people are stating that they're a little bit concerned about Spurs losing the opening 2 games. How are you actually feeling as a Spurs fan? Are you still feeling optimistic about this season?
I am because it's only 2 games, Chris. Of course, I'm disappointed. Look, I'm as disappointed as anyone, as Leigh said. But it is only the first 2 games. The transfer window hasn't closed yet. We've got till Tuesday to bring maybe one. De Zerbi was talking about another player as well. But it just comes back to, I know I probably sound like a broken record, but we brought in 8, and they are good players. I mean, I'm sorry if anybody thinks that they're not good quality players. They are. Manchester City were interested in Tonali. Manchester United fought with us for Fernandes. Well, maybe not fought, but they were definitely interested in Fernandes. And we got these players. They are going to, they are good. They're players. They're not players that only been there like 6 months or whatever. These players for the last couple of seasons, all of them have performed well. Van Heck was really good at Brighton. Fernandes was their, best player last season for West Ham, even though, okay, they went down, but he was a shining star for them. Tonali, same at Newcastle. All of these players that we brought in, they are very, very good players, but you can't, this is football. This is not FIFA, okay? This is not a PlayStation game. These are human beings. It takes time. When you start at a new job, when you go to a new company, yes, they're professional players. Yes, they are at a certain level. And we weren't awful today. Like, we were better than we were against Brentford last week. So there is progress. Definitely. We weren't as bad as we were at Brentford last week. Yes, the progress maybe seems a little bit slow, but we just have to be patient. Look, it's difficult for me as well to sit here and try to put a positive spin on it. But especially in the first half today, we did see some really good passing and one-touch football, some nice through balls. the Newcastle goalkeeper had to make 2 really good saves. One from Tell. I know a lot of people are criticizing Tell. I thought he was good in the first half. In the second half, he completely fell away, yes. But in the first half, he was all right. He was penetrating them on that left side all the time. It was just his final ball that was letting him down. But he did that one cut in and took a shot and made the Newcastle goalkeeper make a really, quite decent save. And then Van Hecker also forced literally on the line. The Newcastle goalkeeper made a really good save. So had those goals gone in, we could have, gone in sort of, having scored some goals. But look, yes, there's lots of improvement to be done. And trust me, Roberto De Zerbi knows that. Roberto De Zerbi knows where the areas that we need to get better. But again, it comes back to also, we Kudus, brilliant. The fact that he was on the bench today, he came in and made a cameo. He made a couple of good runs. He didn't really do much, but again, the guy, what do you expect? The guy got injured sort of just after the new year last year, and he hasn't played literally for half a season. He hasn't kicked up, well, apart from recent, obviously, training that he's done in pre-season, he's hardly kicked a ball. He's hardly played a competitive game. So, there's something called match fitness, and it's going to take a few games for these players to get that match fitness. Yes, some teams look better prepared than we do. But then again, last week, Brentford, their side is a very, very settled side. Majority of that team have played together for the last couple of seasons. They brought in 1 or 2 additional players to bring them up even better, like another level or so. Whereas we've gone out there and bought 8 new players because that squad needed an overhaul, which is exactly what we did. Normally, guys, we've been all screaming for years for this club to spend money on decent players. Yeah, the club have spent money in the past, but on very mediocre players. Whereas this summer, nobody can say club haven't brought in decent quality players. They have, but it's just going to take a little bit of time. You just got to, as I told you, like come sort of, I would say, middle to end of September, maybe even beginning of October, and you will see a much, much better team. We already, within a week, we've seen a slightly better performance. Obviously, we're not going to count midweek because that was a championship team. It was a Carabao Cup game. But in the Premier League as well, just literally in the space of a week, we've seen a better performance from majority of those players. But it is going to take time. Kudus is going to come back. Maddison's going to come back. A lot of these players have not, even in pre-season, they haven't played together. Hardly any games. So unfortunately, we're having to kind of do the work that we would normally do in pre-season now. So the first month of the season is when we're having to do the pre-season, which is why you're seeing these kind of teething problems. But give it another few more weeks. Once these players get a few more games under their belt, it is going to be much better. Believe me, I assure you it's going to be better. Because De Zerbi is a world-class manager. A lot of those players are top players, and they have the skills, they have the quality, they're at the level. They're players that De Zerbi wanted. He's said it several times himself. And he's gonna once they all gel together, we're gonna have a really, really good team, and not just a really good 11, but a really, really good bench, a really strong bench as well. So, just hang in there. Just that's it.
Dustin, what positives would you take from this season so far in the 3 competitive games that we've played? The 3-0 away defeat against Brentford, the 5-1 win against Charlton midweek, and now today's 2-0 defeat at home against Newcastle. What are the positives for you?
I'm not going to be negative, but I think that the positive is that we don't really know what the shape of the squad is going to be yet, because we haven't really had the whole squad together. We've had, pre-season that wasn't great. So I would say the positives are kind of like in the unknowns. And we've seen against Charlton, against less good opposition, we've seen kind of what we can do. Whether you can do it against better opposition is a different thing. But at least, we're not fluffing our lines against lower league opposition, right? So that's a start. The other is that we have players that are starting to come back into fitness. So it's great to see Kudus get some minutes. It's great to see that he has some of the touches still that, once he gains fitness, once he fits into the system, you can see him being very influential there. And then if you have Marmoush and Savio on the other side, you're looking at a front line that actually starts to look a lot more exciting than the front line that started our Brentford game, for example. So even from that perspective of how much we've improved the front line with new signings and one recovering from injury. It's a night and day just from the perspective of improving the quality there and assigning to come in as well. There are lots of things that aren't clicking right now just because, like I said earlier, players just haven't had the chemistry. They haven't figured each other out yet. And I think De Zerbi is also coming to grips with what the Premier League is like this season. From the perspective of he played in the Premier League with Brighton, he had his style of play, but the tactical evolution of the Premier League has kind of gone maybe 3 or 4 seasons without him, and he needs time to adjust to that as well. He's used to like what he did at Brighton working out for him, but there have been many iterations of what the tactical meta is in the Premier League, and it's gotten to a point where the things that worked at Brighton all those years ago aren't working now, and then he has to adapt. I'm not saying he can't. He's definitely going to adapt. And it's a process of him adapting, the team figuring out the chemistry, and seeing where we end up. So there's still lots of possibilities. I'm not saying it's a disaster. I'm just saying that I can't anticipate what we haven't seen yet, but there's no reason to believe that it can't happen.
Leigh, let's come to you. Now let's talk about the game itself. After just 42 seconds, Kinski was tracking back after a Newcastle cross in. After 3 minutes, Mickey van der Ven was given the yellow card. How great is it to have Mickey van der Ven and the likes of Pedro Porro back in the starting 11?
Yeah, I think they made a big difference today. They're still a bit scratchy, but and Mickey looks like he's still trying to find his pace, but I think they just give us a bit more of assurancy. I thought our start seemed a bit nervy, which was odd, or maybe not. I don't know. But I expected us to play with a bit more front foot. But those guys, like the 2 moments you mentioned, were both. They had a touch of sort of last gasp tackle to them. I mean, nothing was going in, but we were scrambling a bit at the beginning, and it seemed. And Dustin were probably a better sense of this, but it seemed to me like Newcastle blocked off the passing lanes into our midfield, and so the only place we were going was like down the sides, and it was a bit hit and hope really early on, and that was a shame because most of the money we spent was in sort of, in theory, giving us people in midfield who can receive the ball under pressure, turn and pass, and we seem to struggle there. But I think having those 2 guys back in our defence was I think it just breeds confidence, and I think that's what we need right now.
Leigh, just want to get your reaction to Roberto De Zerbi in the press conference just now. He said, Richarlison, he said to me too many times that he wants to leave. Danso come to me 2 days ago and said he wants to leave. Sarr the same, but he also suffered a small injury, but he is almost ready to train. It now looks like Richarlison, Danso, Sarr are on their way out of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. Let's get your reaction to that.
I mean, I've got a lot of time for big Kev Danso, not because I think he's the best centre-half we've ever had, but he's a warrior. And I think even him coming on in the Europa Cup final made a big difference for us. So I'm sad to see that he wants to go, but he's no spring chicken. He probably wants to play, but I'd sort of hoped he would want to stay. As for the other 2, yeah, they should go. I mean, they're not going to get the minutes they want. Our squad needs that balance. So I'm not sad about it, although ironically, if a fit Sarr might have the legs that we've been searching for, but I think he's not really fulfilled his potential yet. So I think I would have no problem with him going, but I'd be a bit sad about Big Kev because I think he's been a great servant for the club in the short time.
Orchy, let's come to you. After 15 minutes, Sandro Tonali to Matisse Tell. He took it inside, shot at the goalkeeper. Goalkeeper saved it. I like the way that Sandro Tonali played the ball forward a number of times in that first half. What did you make of his performance today, and what have you made of his performances in a Spurs shirt to date?
Today, overall, because he went missing in certain parts of the game, but like in the first half especially, I mean, as a team, I think we played better in the first half than we did in the second half. We kind of did a complete opposite of last week. In last week, we were non-existent in the first half, and in second half, once certain plays came on, we were slightly better. This game, yeah, the first half was better. We created more chances in the first half. Tonali was making some good some good passes, but also he was getting. I mean, it's quite clear when you watch him play, and compared to let's say when he was at Newcastle previously, and he had Guimaraes around him and other players. He looked fitter. He looked more on it. Whereas he was off the pace a little bit at times this game. A couple of times he lost the ball or he gave the wrong passes. But yeah, in the first half he made some good passes as well. It was kind of it was like a 50-50. He was good and then he kind of disappeared, then he was good again, then he kind of disappeared. But clearly again his match fitness isn't there yet. Which is, I know I keep saying the same thing, but that's where I think the problem is with a lot of these players. I mean, even Fernandes today, at points of the game, he was really good. He was chasing down players, winning some tackles, but some of them, again, he was going missing. He was giving the ball away at times. So a lot of the players did that today. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy he's here, and I'm sure eventually he's going to come good once he gets up to speed, once the players around him also get up to speed, and we kind of have let's say our strongest 11 available, fit and ready. I think you are going to see a much more. But the positive is, and again, I'm just going to concentrate on the positives because yes, we can sit here and criticize a lot of things from today, but the positives are again today at certain periods of, especially in the first half, we saw some really brilliant one-touch football, one-touch progressive forward passes, and there were some decent style of play. You can see what De Zerbi has been working on. I'm not saying they were successful every single time. I'm not saying they were executed well every single time, but that's because of the lack of match fitness. Once we get that, these players are going to be, performing at a much, much better level. And I think Newcastle also knew a little bit which areas to, put their players to block our attacks and block some of those passing. They knew where the areas that they needed to block and stop. So yeah, I mean, look, I'm happy. There is not a single signing that we made this summer so far that I would criticize. I think they're all really, really good players, and they've improved our squad. They've improved our depth. They've improved. It's just that we haven't seen it yet, but we will. With patience, we will see it.
Dustin, let's come to you. After 22 minutes, Pedro Porro had a shot which went over the bar. On 32 minutes, Robertson cross was cleared. A minute later, corner from Robertson. Marmoush, unmarked, hit the side netting. After 36 minutes, a good ball to Robertson. Shot was saved. After 37 minutes, Fernandes, corner, Van Hecker, an attempt at goal. Goalkeeper saved it. A minute later, good move from Tottenham. Tonali, Marmoush, Porro, all involved. Tell, goalkeeper then saved. On 43 minutes, Tell on the right, put the ball in. No one was there. A minute later, Tonali, good pass to Pedro Porro. His shot was blocked. Now, I've got to say, when I went in at half-time, talking to a number of Spurs fans here at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, everyone was very optimistic, even at half-time, and said that Spurs created a lot of chances. Didn't put the ball in the net, obviously. But I felt, and a lot of people here, felt that it was a good opening 45 minutes. Would you agree with that assessment?
Sorry.
Dustin?
Hi, sorry. I thought I unmuted myself, but I remuted myself. So yeah, I think that I would agree with that assessment. I'm just looking at my notes for the first half, and most of the first half are notes about things that we did well, what we created. It's really second half where I see a lot more notes about what Newcastle is doing well. So I think that I would agree with that assessment. From my perspective, I think that Newcastle really figured out how they could prevent De Zerbi from playing. And one thing that I mentioned earlier was how we always seem outnumbered wherever we went. So this is us outnumbered when we're attacking. We're outnumbered 6-9 in their box. In other phases of play, I think this was the 83rd minute. This is us outnumbered 5-7 when we're attacking as well. And I think both Orchy and Leigh brought up the fact that, they were blocking the passing lanes. So when we got the ball, I think the big part of the problem is that Newcastle was extremely disciplined. They covered every passing option available. So we were often passing backwards because there were no good options. They were using their cover shadow very well. They had a very good plan in terms of pressing and making sure that even if a Spurs player received the ball, they were never given time and space to turn and pick a pass, which is the opposite of what Newcastle did for the Elanga goal, where you have a player here that has all the time and space in the world to pick out a pass to someone and I think aerial dominance also plays a part here, where both of our centre-backs are not very aerially dominant, and Danso is, and he might be leaving the club. So I think that's one area where teams can pick us off, where they know that our centre-backs aren't the best in the world hitting the ball, and we're gonna have a lot of aerial bombardment. But going back to the theme of how Newcastle was suffocating the passing lanes, you can see that even the way that they were pressing us, there was a lot of man-to-man pressing whenever we were trying to build up, and then when we were attacking, they would cover the lanes very well. So is what Newcastle is doing, but the other part is what are we doing? How are we running? How are we creating space? And that's where I was concerned about the lack of mobility, because I didn't see people running to spaces, making themselves available. You normally expect to see that from you see it from Tel, Berival, Archie Gray, for example, but we felt very static. We didn't feel very mobile. We didn't look like we had an idea of how we wanted to play out of possession and create passing options for teammates. So that's the part that concerned me more, where the way the team moves, you can see when the team is fluid, when the team has chemistry, is when they move, they interchange, they make space for each other, they make runs to draw defenders away, and I'm not really seeing that from us at the moment.
Leigh, let's come to you. Actually, before we talk about the second half, can I ask how you were feeling at the half-time break?
I'd say reasonably optimistic. I think it was there were signs to be encouraged. I think we'd had a couple moments, and we didn't have any sort of absolute nailed on chances. We had half chances, some blocks, but overall, I was just. It was a little bit like we were huffing and puffing. There was no sort of fluidity, to Justin's point, but we know why. So, I was feeling pretty positive.
Leigh, let's stay with you. So, of course, at half-time it was 0-0. After 47 minutes, Tottenham had a penalty shout. I can tell you now that in front of the South Stand were going crazy, clearly thinking it was a penalty. Marmoush was brought down. Do you want to talk us through that? Was it a clear-cut penalty for Tottenham?
It wasn't a clear-cut penalty, but the cliche of cliches, you've seen them given. Let's put it this way: we've had them given against us. There's no two ways about that. I think he kicked his foot. I mean, I haven't seen it back. And the other thing that was kind of, maybe this is an edict this year, but there didn't seem to be a great deal of time spent looking at it. Now, I don't want to be a hypocrite, because we've all called for VAR to make faster decisions and not dwell on, sort of microscopic, back and forth. But that one, it seemed like there was at least a 50-50 shout, and yet they kind of waved it on. So I thought it was a pen. Was it a clear-cut pen? No, but it was a 50-50 in the box. And I don't think we'd have been shocked if it was given.
Orchy, let's come to you. Bentancur with a shot cross. Goalkeeper dealt with it after 47 minutes. Hall then blasted over for Newcastle on 50 minutes. And then 5 minutes later, a long-range shot deflected wide. That was another Newcastle effort. On 59 minutes, we heard a huge "Come on, you Spurs" around the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. The crowd were trying to play their part. How are you feeling after the 60-minute mark? And I'll also add that Marmoush had a 20-yard shot, which went well wide at that point.
Second half was, as the second half went on, to be honest, it became more and more frustrating for me because I didn't see us I didn't see the periods of gameplay that we were even seeing in the first half. Um, in fact, I think, I mean, I know you said that we may have had some chances, but they weren't on target. We didn't have a single on target shot until I think it was the 82nd minute in the second half. I'm pretty sure looking at the stats. Yeah, so I think for the whole of the second half, we didn't have a single shot on target until around the 82nd mark, which was quite frustrating. So as the half went on, I became more and more frustrated, to be honest, because I thought, well, in the first half, we were at least, at times we were putting some good passing together. But yeah, it was getting frustrating. But then at the same time, I just had to keep reminding myself that, again, these players, clearly, a number of them, they're not match fit yet. And yeah, I mean, I was waiting for also changes. I thought, look, Gray just wasn't working at right back for me. So I thought, come on, bring on Kudus. Let's see Kudus for the last 20, 30 minutes. Pull Porro back to right back, bring on Kudus. Make a couple of changes maybe from the bench. I thought, and by the way, I just want to add, I think today probably our best player was Bentancur. He was really good today. I thought he kind of played a very defensive midfielder role, and he was as best as he can. I know we lost 2-0, but still, he was really marshalling, that area in front of the defense quite well. He was quite solid. And even when we were attacking and we were getting overturned, he was sweeping and bringing the ball back into attack again. So I thought he was one of the players that actually deserves a little bit of credit from today. He definitely his match fitness seems to be good. So let's just hope that the rest of the players kind of get to that level. He was, I mean, last week as well against Brentford, when he and Fernandes came on, we improved slightly. So again, it seems, we've got the old Bentancur back, touch wood, long may that continue. But yeah, so Bentancur, when he first arrived at Tottenham with Kulusevski, we seem to have that Bentancur back again. And the last two games, he's probably been our most consistent player throughout the 90 minutes of, well, he only played half a game last week, but yeah, it was frustrating. And I think as the minutes went on, it looked like the players were getting nervous as well, because obviously they were losing, and you can hear you can feel the energy from the crowd as well getting on their backs. So they desperately, clearly wanted to do something, but they kind of started running out of ideas a little bit, and the play got worse and worse.
Orchy, let's get your reaction to Roberto De Zerbi's comments in the press conference just now. He said, "I'm sorry for the club because they are building a great squad, but maybe now we are not ready yet for many, many reasons. We're not ready yet for many reasons, but today I think until the first goal we played better. Newcastle is a good team, good coach, good players, good at everything, but we created more chances to score. We shot more times. We had the control of the ball more than Newcastle."
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with a lot of what he said. We did. I mean, when you look at the official stats, we had more passing than they did. We had more of the possession than they did. I think even overall chances, we slightly edged them. I mean, Newcastle weren't amazing today by any stretch of the imagination. They weren't. I thought they were actually better, more clinical last week against Liverpool. When I saw their performance last week, I was more worried, and I think they weren't as good as they were last week. So it's just that they took their chances. They created only, you can count with one hand the number of actual shots on goal, but they took two of those chances, and that was the main difference. There were at times like both teams weren't great at certain points of the game. A lot of misplaced passes, a lot of loss of play. So yeah, I mean, I would agree with that, but at the same time, he's the manager, he's the coach. He needs to get these players up to speed as soon as possible. But then I'm sure he knows that. I'm sure he knows what he needs to do to get this team developing. And it's not just, I mean, in this past week, in a lot of his interviews, he talks about team spirit. He talks about soul. He talks about, and yeah, there are a lot of new faces in that dressing room. And as I keep saying, they just need a bit more time to gel together, to practice, to play together, understand each other. And that understanding only comes from, just playing and playing and playing and getting minutes under your belt. So both the fitness levels will go up, the understanding between the players will go up, and they will absorb the way Roberto De Zerbi wants to play. And as I keep saying, give it like a few weeks, after probably by the next couple of games, you're just going to see progressively better and better and better performances. So yeah.
Dustin, let's come to you. Of course, Newcastle took the lead in the game after the 62nd minute. Elanga getting Newcastle's opener. Do you want to talk us through this goal?
Yeah, I think essentially what happens is, I'm not sure who the player that passed the ball was, but he was given too much time on the ball, so he was allowed to pick a big diagonal that someone flicked onto Elanga, and I think that Elanga was basically Newcastle's main strategy just because of his speed. So what they tried to do a lot was that they tried to draw Mickey van der Ven away from Elanga, and they would frequently have a striker near Mickey van der Ven drop deep and have Van der Ven follow him, and then that would free up Elanga, and then Elanga would basically be up against Tonali or up against a slower player, because the only player on our team that can keep up with Elanga is Mickey van der Ven. So as long as they pull Van der Ven away and then play a ball to Elanga in space, and Elanga just sprints for it, that was one of their main strategies. So in this case, it was flicked on to Elanga, and then Elanga scored. I think it's a team that I've mentioned previously where my concerns are now our centre backs aren't very aerially dominant, and it means that a lot of flick-ons are going to be problems for us. We've seen, I think, in the Brentford game, a number of corners would go to the far corner, and teams did what we did last season with Romero, which is have a centre back at the far end, and he hits it back into the box. So we're starting to see that being played against us now. I think teams have isolated the fact that our centre backs are not good in the air. So if Danso goes, I think we're going to see a lot of high balls into the box. So that was the goal we conceded against Elanga, and I think that one of the issues that we have from that perspective is that a lot of our press is not coordinated, and that results in players getting too much time to pick a pass. If you're not going to cover the lane, so you're not going to man mark or press high well, then at least make sure the ball carrier doesn't have time to put a nice ball in. And the lack of pressure on the ball carrier is the biggest problem that we have, particularly when we're up against teams with players with the speed of Elanga. Don't let anyone pick up across, especially when they have a fast winger. So that's one thing we definitely need to cut out.
Leigh, let's come to you. After conceding the first goal after 62 minutes, De Zerbi made a treble sub on 68 minutes. Udogie, Kudus and Moore all coming on. Robertson, Gray and Tell all coming off. Of course, it's great to see Mohamed Kudus back in a Tottenham Hotspur shirt. How excited are you by seeing him perform this season?
No, I'm a big Kudus fan. Great to see him back. He was pretty rusty. I mean, as expected, but they looked scared of him. They were doubling up on him, and I thought he might at least create some space and openings for other players. Didn't quite work out like that way, but I think he's obviously wants to manage a doggy. I like Robinson a lot. I think he was maybe at fault for that first goal, but he kind of, he had an aerial disadvantage, but he obviously wants to manage. He doesn't think a doggy could play 2 games a week. I don't think. The Mikey Moore one, I don't know. I like Mikey Moore, but it was a surprise. I was expecting Marmoush to go out wide and to get Solanke on, and it's asking a lot. I think Mikey Moore, love him as we do, I think he's not ready. He's got to go on loan, and I don't think he bothered any of the Newcastle players particularly. So I got it on one level, but I was expecting Marmoush to go to the left, get a bit more direct with Solanke, which eventually we did when he came on, just because we were lacking a focal point And so at least we had a big guy to play the ball up to. But yeah, really happy to see Kudus back. Let's just hope he just, he stays in the team now.
Orchy, do you want to add anything about Mohamed Kudus and his return?
Yeah, we've been waiting for it for a long time. We know what he provides and how good he is. And similar to Tell, actually, they're both good at running at plays. We saw it in the first half. Look, I know a lot of people are saying a lot of nasty things about Tell, but in the first half, he was causing, especially in the periods where we had the ball, he was penetrating Newcastle on that left-hand side. It's just his final ball that lets him down. But again, give him some time with Roberto De Zerbi, and I'm sure you're going to see a very different player. And I mean, today, in the first half, he had one of the shots. He forced the goalkeeper to make a really good save. So he's not, yes, it frustrates me as well. He runs, and there are times when you can see, like, when he should maybe make a pass, he holds on to the ball too much, and the chance to catch out the defender goes. So it's just that decision making, but that's something that can be coached. The thing that you can't teach a player is to, take on defenders and get past defenders and dribble past defenders. That's something that is either a natural ability or not. And both Kudus and Tell, and obviously now Savio, these are the kind of players that does that really, really well. But again, with time, with some bit more practice, a bit more, minutes under their belts, these players, Roberto De Zerbi, I'm confident, is going to coach them to a level where there's going to be lots of different, play styles of play and plans of how to, what they need to do when they get into certain areas. He will, like, you saw it, Chris, when you went to New Zealand and Australia, how much Roberto De Zerbi spends on that pitch talking to players. You said it yourself many a times. It's one of the things that you said you were really impressed. So he will spend every day that when they're in training, he will spend time with them saying, look, when the ball is there, go here, pass it there. You should be moving over here, and I want you here, and so on and so on. So these are things that are going to get drilled into the players as the weeks go by. So yes, brilliant. We will have options. I mean, what amazing options will we have? Savio, Tell, Kudus. These are players that can, once they get up to match fitness, once they get up to speed, these are going to be scary wingers that are going to, really cause some trouble for the opposition defenders and fullbacks. So yeah, very, very exciting. So yeah, we just got to be patient. I know it's hard. It's hard for me as well. It's not easy to say, but we just have to have patience. I think that's the key word of today, patience.
Dustin, after 70 minutes, Pedro Porro had a shot, goalkeeper tipped it over. A minute later, Mateus Fernandes had a long-range shot, which went wide. And then on 72 minutes, and sorry to come to you on the second goal as well, Wissa, of course, scored Newcastle's second from a set-piece. Walter Marder, of course, Newcastle sub, headed it down, and Wissa finished. What did you make of this goal that we conceded and Spurs defending?
Again, aerial dominance. So we have Walter Marder up against Udogie, one of the most comical mismatches of man marking you can think of. And then Wissa, I think that Walter Marder's always going to win the flick on against Udogie, right? And sometimes, when players are blocked off, you can't really choose who takes on the giant. But the fact that Wissa was allowed that kind of space and basically no one was marking Wissa in that position, that's the problem. From my perspective, one of the things I'm a little worried about with Jean-Paul Van Hecker, and I don't think that we saw this for the Netherlands, so I don't know whether it's a structural thing, but I get very worried about his positioning because it feels like he's frequently out of position, and a lot of the kind of last-ditch tackles that he makes are recovering from his bad initial position, and then he has to make a last-ditch tackle to make up for it, which is fine to make. It's fine to make a good last-ditch tackle, but Maldini doesn't need to make tackles because he's always in the right place. And I feel like Jean-Paul Van Hecker's positioning is, I wasn't concerned about it previously, but I'm starting to get a little bit worried about it. So there are two trends that I noticed, which is that his positioning was worrying, and the other was that a lot of our passing was kind of just not in time. A lot of passes were blocked, intercepted, and it feels like, when our players are on the ball, maybe they're so maybe they have PTSD from last season, and two bad results in a row are starting to weigh on their minds. But it felt like they were snatching at opportunities. They were trying to unload the ball. They were hiding and trying not to be available because they didn't want to be the one that lost the ball, or in Tel's case, missed the free kick. But it felt like, they were playing scared, and as a result, they were trying to unload the ball and sometimes passing rather than holding and waiting for the passing lane to open. So it felt to me that there's a lack of composure there. And hopefully, with the coaching that happens in between now and the next game, we'll get to a situation where they are cooler on the ball and they don't snatch at the opportunities, because I think that's a big part of why you see the entire team playing beneath what we know they can do, because I think they're panicked a little.
Dustin, let's stay with you. Now, after, of course, Spurs conceded the second goal, Tonali, a couple of minutes later, went off. He was booed by the Newcastle fans, the away end. Solanke came on. A couple of minutes later, Mohamed Kudus overhit across into the box. On 85 minutes, Mikey Moore had a shot over the bar from distance. A couple of minutes later, cross from the right into Marmoush. Hit it first time straight at the goalkeeper. What did you make of our debutant today, Omar Marmoush?
I think that he did the best he could. I think that there needs to be time for him to build up chemistry with the rest of the team. You can see that. I think it's similar to Savio. When Savio came on against Charlton, you kind of saw like his dynamism, his willing to take players on. That's something that we're missing in the squad. And I think with Marmoush, it was not the same, but it was similar in the sense that they haven't learned Spursiness, I guess. But you can see that they want the ball, they're demanding it, they want to take players on, they want to put their mark on the game, they think they can create something. And I think that with a lot of these new signings, we have to turn the momentum around so that they don't get dragged down to the standard of the team that played the last 2 seasons, and their performances and their gumption and their ability and their willingness to try difficult things lifts the rest of the team up rather than them being dragged into the mud. So he tried a bunch of things. It didn't all pan out, but you could see the intention there. You could see that with better chemistry, with players that understand his runs and play passes into him or make dummy runs that free him up, you can see how he can be a big contributor to this season.
Leigh, let's come to you. In stoppage time, there was a cross into Dominic Solanke who flicked it towards goal, and then it was eventually cleared. With the transfers that Spurs have made, particularly in the front three, with Savio coming in, with Omar Marmoush coming in, it now looks like Richarlison's going to go out the door. Solanke, of course, is a striker at Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. Are you confident that we are going to score a hatful of goals going forward?
I think we got the players to do it. I'm excited by Marmoush. I mean, he just needs somebody or people to connect with him. To Justin's point about chemistry, he was kind of running around, and there were a couple of moments in the first half where there were some 1-2s. But whether it's Fernandes or Maddison when he comes back, or Kudus when he gets fit, he needs people he can play off, because he likes those runs in behind. I come back to what we talked about at the beginning. Is I don't think, unless our midfield gets control, and again I think we have the players to do it. Unless our midfield could control a game, we're not going to create chances. If we're just expecting a line ball from Robertson or a tell something or other, if it's just basically coming from the width, we're going to get shut out. We have to have, and again, I think it's why we signed the players we did. We've got to get better control of the midfield so that we can create from wide, but we can create centrally. And today we were completely blocked off from the centre. And I think until we start to get a grip on that, which will probably be to do with Tonali's fitness, it will be to do with other players coming back. I also thought Banter had a great game, by the way. I think that was Orchy talking about earlier. I think he was a calming feature, and I think he came out of this pretty well. So I think once we get control of that midfield, then I would expect us to create more chances. Until we do, unfortunately, we look a little bit one-dimensional. But I like the setup of this roster compared to what we went in to last season. So, yeah, I think there's more reasons to be cheerful than not.
Now, last question for you all. Of course, the August games are now done. We have 4 competitive games in September, taking us up to the international break. So we've got Nottingham Forest away next Saturday. Then we have Everton at home. Then we have Liverpool away in the Carabao Cup 3rd round. And then we have Aston Villa at home. Leigh, how confident are you that Spurs are going to get a positive result at the City Ground next weekend? And where are the points coming from? Because we need something. We need positive results. We need points going into that international break.
Yeah, I can't look. I can't be confident. I'm hopeful. I'm not confident, but I'm hopeful. I think a point of Forest will go a really long way, and I can't see De Zerbi setting up for a point and parking the bus. But maybe he will. But I think if we get something out of that game, I think it'll be something to build on. I don't know how many of those games we mentioned we're going to get something from based off what we saw today. But if we keep tracking in the right direction, we should pick up a few. We got some tough games in that fixture list, but I think we could get a point at the City Ground. Do I feel confident we're going to win right now? No, maybe not. But I think we could go there absolutely and come away with something.
Orchy, same question to you. And I might add here, earlier today, Forest got a 2-2 draw away at Liverpool.
Yeah, I watched that game actually. I had it on in the background, so I watched it a little bit. Liverpool actually could have won that game had they finished their chances. They had chances to win that game, but they didn't really. So 2-2 doesn't tell the full story. But yeah, I mean, look, Forest are a good team, especially when they're at home. So, but I agree with Leigh. I think we can get a point there for sure. Again, it's going to be a whole week. See, in a way, this week was kind of disrupted with the Charlton game in the middle of the week, whereas this next week we're going to have De Zerbi's going to have a full week to work, especially with the newest guys, with Savio and both Marmoush as well. So, I mean, look, we completed the Marmoush signing only, a day or 2 days ago. So, he hasn't had much time. Neither has Savio. So again, it's just a matter of spending time with them, having this whole week to get on that training pitch, work on some plans, work on some styles of play. Obviously, they would have analyzed Forest from today's game and from last weekend. So I can see that Kudus will obviously, his fitness will be a bit higher. They did say he will be fine. Savio will be fine for next week. So there's a potential that maybe Savio will start next week. And imagine maybe Kudus is fit enough and maybe Porro's fit to start right back. So, all of a sudden the team looks a little bit more different. And as I said, another full week of training, getting their conditioning up, getting their match fitness up. Potentially you're going to see hopefully a much better performance next weekend. I have faith and I have hope that we're going to see a better team next weekend than we did today. So I think we can get a point there. And then after that, I think you said we have a home game against Everton. We have, 2 home games, is it right? Home game against Everton and home game against Aston Villa, right?
Yeah, and sandwiched in between that, the Liverpool away game in the Carabao Cup.
Sure. Well, again, the Liverpool, I think at home, both Everton Everton, they've started all right this season. But again, I think we always do well against Everton at home. So again, that will be like another week of training by the time we get to Everton. We'll be at home. So I think, as I said, by the time we get to the latter stages of September, I think you're going to see a much better drilled team. Players, their fitnesses will be much better. And I think we are going to see a better quality matches. So I would imagine us, I would say a point at Forest potential, a good potential next week. And then after that, I think we can get 3 points against Everton at home. And I think we can get 3 points against Aston Villa at home. As for the Liverpool game, the Champions League games will have started, and I've got a feeling Iraola is going to be, rotating that squad. So we might not be facing a full strength Liverpool team anyway. So anything can happen in that. It's a cup game. Obviously, we're going to take it seriously. I'm sure De Zerbi is going to put out a full strength team. So we'll see.
And finally, with you, Dustin, and I don't know whether I should add, but I suppose I should. It was a tough day for Tottenham at the City Ground last year. Are you expecting another tough afternoon?
Given our record with like players that we tried to sign last season with like Semenyo and Morgan Gibbs-White and everything, like it's games against players we tried to sign, or games before international break, right? So I think that Forest are a tough game for us, primarily because they're so robust in midfield, and I think that we need to go toe to toe with them, and a lot of it needs to be ensuring that we match them up in midfield, because a big part of why we suffered so badly against Forest last season was that we were completely bullied in midfield, and not just bullied but outnumbered and bullied. So the profiles didn't fit, and there were just not the right players there and not enough of them. So whatever we do against Forest is about matching them up in midfield, whether it's bringing centre backs in and bringing wingers that help out with the midfielders. And a big part as well will be for the remaining games which are at home. I know it's very hard to make this appeal just because of what we've been through the last 2 seasons, but I understand how it feels as a fan that you want to boo or you want to go home and you're done with this. But if there's a time that the team needs us, it's now. And there are all these new players that have joined the club. You've got Savio that's joined because, Xavi told him, yes, come here, they will love you and everything. And we don't want to prove them wrong by booing them after, the first 2 games of the season. I understand you're frustrated, but booing is necessary when you think it solves a problem. And last season, there were times that we were booing because we directed it at the club for not signing players and everything. But at this point, if you're booing, who are we actually helping? What are we helping in terms of the situation? Are we directing at the board saying sign more players? If we're directing it that way, it's fine. But if it's just a broad boo to the performance, I don't think it's really helping the players very much. And I understand you're tired. You've been through 2 seasons of 17th place finishes. But, there is a productive time to boo. And it's when the performances really deserve it, and they've not been good. But this is a new set of players, so let's try to lift them up. And if it's still bad after a few months, then do what you need to do. But I think that right now we need to pull together, because they need the 12th man right now, because we are going to be up against it, especially when we don't have the players, we don't have the signings, we still have injury problems.
Dustin, thank you so much for joining us this evening, talking about the Spurs v Newcastle game, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Leigh, thank you so much for your time. And Orchy, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure, mate.
Right, onwards and upwards. Tottenham Hotspur have lost 2 out of 2 in the Premier League, but as we just mentioned, the next game is Nottingham Forest. We all need to get behind this team, get behind Roberto De Zerbi, and let's hope that we pick up our first points of the season at the City Ground on Saturday. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Thanks for listening, and try to enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we will see you again very soon. Come on, you Spurs.